Lara.
Surname?
Croft?
Hello, and welcome to Film Rant. So, which hero do we know who loves to raid tombs, run from big boulders, and have their own signature weapons? That's right, Indiana Jones. Oh no, hang on, it's a woman. Tomb Raider, yeah. Tomb Raider. So here we have a reboot movie that nobody asked for or even wanted, but hey, they've got Alicia Vikander to play Lara Croft, so count me in. This movie is directed by Luo Ren. Now that is a name I will never forget, and is loosely based on the reboot game released in 2013 in which Lara finds herself stranded on a large island with lots of bad guys and has to learn to become a survivor. Now that game was damn brilliant. I've played all of the Tomb Raider games and for me it was the best one, but I know some people would disagree with that. Anyway, we aren't here to talk about games, we're here to talk about movies, and was this unwanted reboot worth the money that was spent making it? Well, to answer that I'll be going into spoiler territory, so sexy climb your way to the cinema if you don't want anything spoiled. I really like Alicia Vikander as Lara Croft. She works really well as an inexperienced baby-faced Lara, but I'm not sure if she's going to be able to pull off the tougher Lara we'll no doubt see in a sequel. However, for this movie she's charismatic, she's endearing and just completely likeable. Her Lara is totally different from Angelina Jolie's Lara, much in the same way the game's modern Lara is different from the ruthless take-no-shit Lara from the 90s. I like the more innocent, vulnerable Lara more than the stone-faced killer though, so that totally works for me. I do worry though that she'll lose some character in sequels if they make her the tough Lara, but that remains to be seen. One interesting thing I noticed about Vikander's Lara is that she's not sexualized whatsoever. You see, none of this kind of shit, and honestly, it was kind of refreshing. The old Tomb Raider movies were rife with these kind of scenes, which was glorious for me in my teenage years, but as an adult I don't really care much for it. I also like that Vikander is kind of working class. She wants no part in her father's inheritance. She wants to just live a normal life and work for a living. She's not this entitled rich kid who lives off of her father's wealth. She even sells an item given to her by her father to remember him by in order to pay for her voyage to the island. Again, this definitely helped to make her more likeable and relatable to a larger audience. She's much more humble than previous Lara Crofts. It's also good to show that she's willing to work hard and do things for herself, as this sets up a good foundation for her inevitable character change into the Tomb Raider. The villain in this movie is Fogel.
Gangsters, what's up guys?
No, not that one. This guy, played by Walton Goggins. He's probably one of the worst villains I've seen in a movie, and I've seen every film in the MCU. It's annoying too because this guy has a genuinely sympathetic reason to explain why he's doing what he's doing. Trinity have his family and they're forcing him to get into this tomb in order for him to see his family again. I get that a man can go to extreme lengths to do that, but he never tries to show resistance against being a complete and utter bellend. He needlessly murders his slave workers, he tries to murder Lara and her father more than once, but hey, at least he doesn't try to rape her, right? I feel like this villain is too black and white. He's too evil, kind of like President Snow from the Hunger Games. They could have made him much more human by making him not want to kill his workers even though his thugs try to push him into it, or make him try to work with Lara at first as opposed to just flat out enslaving her and trying to kill her when she escapes. I really hated this character because he had potential to be so much more interesting than he was. Daniel Wu's character, Luo Ren, brother of Kylo, was very likeable and charismatic. He was probably my favourite character in the movie actually, but once he and Lara reach the island he's kind of cast aside and only appears now and again throughout the rest of the movie. I assume he'll be part of Lara's entourage in a sequel, but it's a shame that we didn't get to see more of him in this movie. I would have liked it if he knew a few survival things and he taught Lara how to do stuff to make her into the Tomb Raider. He could have told her how to make campfires, bandage and treat wounds, how to make a bow out of the flora found on the island, that kind of stuff. He could have teamed up with Richard Croft to make Lara into the stronger character she's meant to become by the end of the movie. Ah yes, Richard Croft, a surprise entry to the cast. I'm pretty sure in every game he's dead. I could be wrong on that, but I can't recall his character being alive in any of the games. As for his character in the movie, there's not much to him other than being a desperate father who wants to protect his daughter. He serves his purpose well, but there's not much more about him that'll really grab you. Similar to Luo Ren, it would have been great if he could have been a kind of taskmaster. We could have had Trinity scattered around the island in different camps, and Richard Croft could have asked Lara to sneak into some camps and free this guy, steal this item, sabotage this piece of equipment or whatever, a bit like in the game, in order to stop Trinity getting into the temple. Only on one of the missions Lara is then captured and the final act can go the same way it went in the movie. I would have just liked to see Lara accomplish things by herself and actually see her become a stronger hero throughout the movie, and I think Luo Ren and Richard Croft could have been the guys to guide her to that. That's one of the movie's biggest issues actually. It's easy to see that it's based on the Tomb Raider reboot given the island setting, the vulnerable and inexperienced Lara, and even her costume. While the story may not be the same, the plot certainly is. Lara is learning to become the Tomb Raider by going through a rough ordeal stranded on an island struggling to survive against the elements and a group of thugs with guns. In the game, this is told brilliantly. It certainly helps that in the game this can be told over 30 plus hours and the player actually plays as Lara, so it's easy to attach yourself to her and you can pretty much physically feel her becoming stronger and stronger as the game goes on. However, the movie only has about 2 hours in which to cram all of this character development and it doesn't have the added bonus of audience interaction, so it's tough. I really don't feel like the movie successfully shows Lara becoming stronger and becoming what she was born to be. You're certainly meant to think that by the end of the movie. I mean, the final scene is literally her becoming Tomb Raider. She has the braided ponytail and gets her dual pistols for the first time. But I don't feel like she's ready for that yet. At the start of the movie we see her in a martial arts match. I say martial arts because I've got no idea whether it was kickboxing, UFC or judo or some shit. Either way, she's fighting a woman in a ring. She gets her ass kicked, quite firmly, even tapping out when she's in a chokehold. There's no doubt this was in the movie to show Lara as inexperienced and even weak. I figured by the end of the movie she'd get in the same kind of fight but overcome her opponent, but she doesn't. When she fights Vogel at the end, he still whoops her ass and has her pinned down to the ground and is about to kill her before she's saved by an explosion that distracts him and she quickly makes a move to finish him off. Let's not forget that he's already been shot in the leg as well. I can't believe I'm going to say I want something to be more like Arrow, but here I go. I wanted this movie to be more like Oliver Queen's origin story. He's stranded on an island with lots of thugs and mythological shit going on. He's a pretty rich kid with a dead dad who learns to become a warrior while stranded on the island. He finds mentors in Slade Wilson and Yao Fei, and they teach him how to use a bow, how to hunt, fight, and whatever other skills he needed to become the Green Arrow. That's what this movie should have been. Lara should have found her father and, along with Luo Ren, learned the skills to survive against Trinity and ultimately make her into the Tomb Raider. This is certainly the movie's main aim, but it just misses the mark. I don't feel a sense of pride and accomplishment for her come the end of the movie. Wait, Tomb Raider's a Square Enix game, isn't it? Damn, if this game was made by EA, that joke would have been great. What this movie does successfully bring across from the games is the ridiculous tense action set pieces. It has dropping floors, floor spikes, Lara desperately running and leaping as things are collapsing all around her, Lara getting impaled by a spike on a heavy landing, the big boat accident that leads her to being stranded on an island, whatever thing she's hanging onto, creaking and falling at the last second. It's all straight out of the Tomb Raider and Uncharted games. Some of it is incredibly cheesy, like surviving heavy landings with no serious injuries, everything falling away just at the last second, and her ability to always hold on and support herself with only the tiniest bit of grip. But hey, you know what? It's all bloody fun to watch. After all, it's a Tomb Raider movie, and Roa Utaga's done a damn good job bringing those ridiculously tense, over-the-top moments to screen. The entire movie is fairly faithful to the overall atmosphere of the game, which is definitely a plus. I like the reveal at the end where the gang finally get to Himiko's tomb. Her mythology is told to us on more than one occasion, both times by Richard Croft, which I found to be a bit overkill. If you're going to do exposition, do it once, no need to do it twice. Anyway, it's rumoured that she was captured and buried in this tomb because she was a powerful witch who would cause death and destruction by the touch of a hand. The way it's told makes it sound very supernatural and mythological, but I really enjoyed the reveal that she actually entombed herself in there because she was diseased, and if she was to touch anybody, they would die. She sacrificed herself to save everyone else. I like that it was that simple. There was no supernatural work at play. Granted, the disease that she carries isn't something that actually exists, to my knowledge anyway, and it does make the characters into zombies, but it was a lot less mythological than I thought it was going to be. I was kind of expecting that to come to life like the Crazy Witch and Suicide Squad, and Lara would basically be involved in a boss fight. I'm not entirely sure how this lack of supernatural elements will affect sequels though. It might feel a bit odd if in a sequel Lara finds an old totem that turns people to stone and summons something that looks like this from within the walls, but we'll have to wait and see what they do in the sequels. Something else they brought across from the game was the gravity of Lara's first kill. In the Angelina Jolie movies, Lara is already a stone cold killer, and we don't get to see that transition from innocent woman to the TX from Terminator 3. When Lara strangles a dude to death in this movie, there is a few moments after where she looks at what she's done and looks genuinely remorseful and shocked. However, she knows she has to survive, so she puts it behind her and moves on. The movie does still suffer from the same issue as the game though. She struggles with her first kill, but then finds it no problem later on. I mean, serial killers are being quoted as saying once you get your first, it's easy to do the rest, but still, I'd like to see her show some kind of restraint, and she nearly does. There's a scene where she's investigating the enemy camp and she is in the same tent as Vogel. She has a bow and arrow, he doesn't know she's there, and he has his back turned. She could have easily done away with him there and then, but she chooses to just sneak past him and move on. I like that. I thought, right, cool, Lara's going to try and Rambo her way through this. But not 2 seconds later, she sees a guard controlling a small slave group Daniel Wu is part of, and immediately drops him like a sack of tatties. I figured if you're going to kill anyone, Lara, and if you don't really care about it anymore, why didn't you dome Fogel earlier? I like that the movie showed her getting her first kill and feeling a bit guilty about it, but it becomes undone when she starts killing for the hell of it later in the movie. There is a couple of odd scenes in this movie. There's 2 that stick out, and the first is the first memory scene with her dad. We see this scene over and over again where Lara is given a totem by her dad before he goes away. Lara looks anywhere between 8 to 12 years old in this scene, but we're told on countless occasions that her father went missing 7 years before this movie takes place, and Alicia Vikander's Lara is very clearly in her early 20s, so that doesn't add up. But later on, we're given another scene where her father is leaving again, but Lara looks about 15 or 16, so this one makes sense. I find it odd that there was 2 memory scenes with her dad. We didn't really need the first one. He could easily give her the totem in the second one and just keep that one and drop the first. I thought it was an odd choice to have both of these scenes in the movie. The other scene is the scene where Lara meets Fogel for the first time and he tells her that he killed her dad without any kind of softening to the blow. He's very blunt when he says it. I thought Lara might lash out at him for that and try to do something, but she just kind of exhales some air and wanders out of the tent. I wanted a different reaction to that. I mean, come on, she's spent the last 7 years not knowing for sure whether he's dead or not and has travelled to this island specifically to find him, and she just wanders out of a tent after learning he's been murdered? Surely should have gone for Fogel or tried to get some kind of revenge there and then. I just didn't find her reaction appropriate for the news she was given. It was a very odd scene. I did get the feeling that Tomb Raider is a movie that lacks a bit of depth. There's not much emotional weight to the movie, there's no real message or moral, or even an interesting theme. It's a fun action movie, but it's really only that. Not a bad thing necessarily, but these movies and games never really do anything interesting with their setups. It's nearly always just about a protagonist searching for an old relic while an unknown corporation or army goes after the said relic and causes shenanigans. That goes for Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones and Uncharted. Even the new Jumanji follows the same kind of formula. You could use Lara Croft and her adventures as a vehicle and package to deliver something more philosophical in message. Something like don't dwell on the past or don't repeat history. Something like that. From a technical standpoint, Tomb Raider is incredibly slow starting. The first 40 minutes or so aren't necessarily boring, but you are sat waiting for it to pick up. By the time she got to the island, I thought the movie had been on at least an hour and 20 minutes, but it had only been around 40 minutes. It takes its time to set up Lara's character and home life before jetting her off to Aberdeen in Hong Kong, which is good as it sets up a bit of background for her, and no doubt we'll see more of this London life in a sequel given the twist at the end of the movie, but I found myself waiting and waiting for her to get to the good part, the island. There's also some strange editing in this movie. Nothing is confusing or poorly told, but there's a few jarring cuts here and there, cuts that you don't normally see in a Hollywood movie. There's usually certain rules you follow when shooting and editing. For example, a character being shot like this usually wouldn't cut to a shot like this because they're too familiar and the cut seems unnecessary. But Tomb Raider does this kind of cut a few times, which makes me think it didn't do enough takes or shoot enough footage, so the editor was forced to cut around bad takes or bad deliveries and sort of Frankenstein some scenes. If there was half a good take on this shot and the other half was good on this shot, then the editor kind of has no choice but to use both. There's also some odd sound editing too. It's not out of sync or anything, just sometimes the sound doesn't fit. It's hard to explain what I mean without showing you an example, but there's a scene where Lara is trying to shoot an apple with a bow and arrow and her father comes and talks to her. Watch out for some strange sound editing in that scene if you go and see the movie or watch it again. You'll see what I mean. Ultimately, Tomb Raider is a fun action movie with a very likeable Alicia Vikander as Lara Croft, an awful villain who's so evil he'd probably lock the butler in the fridge and never let him out, and some good side characters who are underused. The movie tries to replicate the same themes and plot from the 2013 game reboot, but without the 30+ hour time in which to tell the story and the lack of audience interaction, it falls well short of the mark. I never really got the impression Lara was becoming the hero we know and love, so I have to say I think the movie failed in its main objective. However, there are some very fun action set pieces to watch, it's not a bad story overall, and it's definitely the best Tomb Raider movie yet. If you're a fan of the games, or even just a casual fan of the games, I'd certainly give this movie a watch. It ain't great, it ain't bad, it's just a bit of fun entertainment and probably a bit forgettable. I can't imagine people will be talking about this movie in a month or so. Tomb Raider gets 3.5 frames out of 5. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Film Rant.